Title: The Housekeeper. Who saw what 20 doctors missed? The room had that soft, expensive hum of machines trying to outrun fate. A billionaire fading in a suite that looked more like a 5-star spa than a hospital, and I was the woman with the squeaky cart. No one heard coming, the one they looked through like glass. Cedar Harbor Medical Center, Executive Recovery Wing. Portland, polished wood on the IV pole's art that matched the drapes. Even the silence felt curated. And right away, I smelled 3 things. I know by heart antiseptic cologne, and a metallic tang that hit the back of my teeth like I'd licked a penny. And sitting neat on the nightstand was a black jar with an elegant label turned perfectly to the room, like it wanted attention. Mason Caldwell lay small and gray under a mountain of white sheets. 20 specialists had flown in 20 mines, with reputations you could frame on a wall. And they all said the same polite thing. We've tested everything. We're narrowing causes, we're close. And I kept wiping in straight lines, because straight lines keep my thoughts steady. Dr. Laurent Hines breezed in with silver hair and a jaw built by confidence tablet glowing like a badge. He gave me the nod you give a sign on the freeway, scene not considered, and asked housekeeping to clear out for rounds. I stepped out not far door, propped by my hip because I don't snoop. I notice, and noticing is a different kind of listening. You know what I mean. They talked numbers with no warmth, renal function slipping, neurological deficits stacking, autoimmune cascade, this atypical that. And I kept smelling the metal near the nightstand, my eyes drifting to that jar I'd seen appear and reappear for a weak bathroom counter yesterday. Bedside today, always within easy reach. A little before 2 a.m., a visitor clicked down the hall in a suit that dared you to wrinkle it. Badge fresh and neat. Colin Mercer, once a rival. Now the rebranded friend. The magazines want you to like. He walked in with that soft voice rich men use when they're pretending to be. Gentle, placed the jar perfectly. Center stage label out, and with a nurse's permission rubbed a little cream into Mason's hands, like it was a ritual small talk about comfort, about a Swiss brand that never irritates his skin. And when he left the jar, sat there, like a black button, waiting to be pushed. At 2:17 a.m. Code blue, the hallway snapped to attention. Bodies moved with a practiced panic. Orders were thrown like ropes. The glass fogged. Where I breathed, the monitor stuttered, and then steadied. And when the room emptied, I went in quietly. Straightened. What needed straightening closed the bathroom door that always drifted. Picked up the jar and turned it in my hand. The cream flickered with a sheen. I did not trust. I can't tell you why a thing sometimes screams without sound. It just does. 10 years ago, I was a scholarship kid who slept in library carrels and carried a chemistry textbook like some people carry a Bible. Then my mother got sick and my little brother needed shoes, and the power company didn't accept extra credit, so I left school, and I kept learning anyway. Thrift store texts online, lectures on my lunch break, reactions scribbled on the back of inventory sheets. Because a garden will grow if you water it, even if the hose is leaking. I tried to do it the proper ways first, found. Dr. Hines asked if I could leave a note about a possible environmental source. He smiled like a man patting a dog and said, "Share housekeeping concerns with nursing. Let the physicians handle medicine." Yeah. That happened, and 2 hours later, I heard laughter through thin walls about how the cleaning staff has diagnostic theories now. At least her penmanship is excellent. And I laughed too, the kind of laugh you swallow, because no one is there to catch it. So I pivoted, Hound Doctor, Priya Shah, younger eyes that actually land on people, and in 1 minute flat, I laid out the pattern. The room was missing, neuropathy, marching upward, hair thinning in a way nature doesn't. Script GI waves that never lined up with Meal's gums. The wrong shade organ. Numbers behaving like a storm offshore, and every spike timed a day or two. After that, Jar showed up after someone, often the visitor, insisted on the hand cream, and she nodded slow at first, then sure, and said, I'll bring it up. I can't promise he'll listen. And I said he doesn't have to listen to me, he just has to look. Security warned me not to interfere, which is a fancy word for stay in your lane. And I nodded. Then I did what I knew I had to do, collected what evidence lives in corners, a trace on a wipe, after I cleaned the nightstand, the faintest residue from a tissue already in the trash. Never taking anything that didn't belong to me, just lifting what the room had already left behind. And I brought it home to my kitchen table that doubles as a lab when the rent is due and the heater is loud. And I won't tell you the name of the poison because I'm not here to educate the worst parts of the internet. I'll just say, it's old school. It slides in through skin. It builds quietly. And if your test isn't aimed like an arrow, you'll miss the bullseye. And when my indicator changed color, my hands shook, then they steadied, and I lined up the hospital's visitor log, posted right at the desk, with the symptom spikes I'd seen while I wiped down bed rails, and the pattern made a sound in my head, like a drum growing louder. Mid-shift. The specialists packed into 4 for a closed-door consult. I walked in. Anyway, uniform. Clean badge, straight. Voice calm. And said, Mr. Caldwell isn't dying of mystery. He's being poisoned through a personal care product, that jar on his nightstand. Is the delivery system, you need a targeted toxicology test for a very specific element, and you need to start the binding agent now, and the silence that followed wasn't polite. It was the kind you feel in your teeth. Hines tried to wave me off. Broad panels, cover it. Ms. Carter and I said, broad panels, miss a slow drip. You have to shoot straight. And Dr. Shah backed me. The timing aligns. If you stop thinking autoimmune and start thinking cumulative exposure, and the older toxicologist asked, not unkind, are you a chemist? And I said I am a woman who didn't stop learning when life told her to clock in. And you could feel the room shift 1 inch toward humility. They ran the focused test. Pulled the footage, made the call to the pharmacy for a treatment. That sounds like a paint color and works like a bouncer. And within the hour, Mason's vitals did something they hadn't done in weeks. They stopped falling. They held, then, little by little, they climbed. And I will never forget the way the monitors sounded when the room believed in them again. Security reviewed the hallway cameras and found Mercer alone with the jar. More than one small funnel from an inside pocket blankers. Working like a man-changing product. And law enforcement walked in, calm and left with cuffs that clicked like a period. At the end of a bad sentence, motive wasn't hard to imagine. A merger on the horizon. A gatekeeper in the way. Greed is boring, but it's consistent. Mason woke up and turned his head to find me, because Hines, to his credit, said it out loud. Missed it, she didn't, and Mason whispered thank you, in a voice that sounded like gravel and gratitude. And I said I saw what didn't fit, and I got tired of staying quiet. Administration did their dance commendation bonus paid leave while the investigation unfolded, which is corporate. For we can't have you emptying trash on Tuesday after saving the guy on Monday. It makes the org chart uncomfortable, and I took it because pride is nice, but rent is due. A week later, a car with soft doors took me to a glass office over the river Mason thinner, but very alive, slid a folder across a desk with a name he offered to fund the rest of my degree. With childcare included, and a part-time spot in the hospital's toxicology lab. Until I finished then. Full-time after, because brains don't vanish when life hands you a different uniform. And I touched the folder and felt the floor tilt in a way that meant a door was opening. Here's the twist you might argue with at dinner. The hospital also offered a plaque and a stipend and a seat on a committee about cross-discipline observation, plus a non-disclosure thick enough to stop a breeze to protect patient privacy. Sure, and to avoid misinterpretation. Sure, but it felt like something else too. Like we'd love to celebrate. As long as everyone agrees not to say exactly where we failed to listen. And I had to ask myself a hard question. Take the seat and the check that helps my kids, or go loud and risk slamming a door. I'd just pried open. Hines apologized in the hallway. Not dramatic, not performative, just a man who looked less tall and more human. Saying, "I'm sorry. I didn't hear you sooner." And I told him listening is a muscle. The good news is you can train it. And he nodded like he'd finally found the gym. Now my mornings start with a backpack and a campus ID, and my afternoons smell like solvent and coffee. My name is on a schedule because someone put it there on purpose. A nurse from a different floor will pop in and say, Why I signed up for night classes. A janitor I used to trade snacks with gives me a fist bump and says, "Make us proud." And on the hardest days, I remember the color change on my kitchen table, and I keep moving. Mercer's lawyers are doing their dance intent. Trace amounts, plausible deniability. English has too many exits when you have money. Maybe he walks, maybe he flips, maybe he spends his mornings in a room that hums without taste. But here's what no one can edit: a woman in a Navy uniform with rolled sleeves saved a life because she noticed what didn't belong and refused to stay invisible. So tell me, if you were me, would you sign the agreement and take the seat at the table, or go public and risk the door closing again? What does justice look like? When the same system that ignored you is the one offering you a hand. Is Hines a villain? Or just a man who forgot how bias works until it almost cost everything? Have you ever watched someone get underestimated until the moment they weren't? And did you say anything when it happened? Drop your take in the comments. Argue with me. Teach me something. And if stories like this, messy, honest underdog wins, are your thing, hit subscribe. Tell me where you're watching from, and tell me what you would have done with a black jar on a nightstand, a metal taste in the air, and a choice that wouldn't wait.